Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just want to do a video on the 12 tribe sign. It looks like, people are posting, their thoughts on it, and it's an important debate, for sure. Um, I think that the sign clearly, just looking at it right now, I mean, it's painting with a very broad paintbrush, obviously, because there's no way that anywhere in the world, probably throughout human history, has one particular tribe occupied a land and be able to consider that like one to one. And obviously Judah is the Negro, so it's like, every single Negro is not necessarily in the tribe of Judah, but definitely not necessarily outside the 12 tribes. They could just appear to look like, others in that group, but could be one of the other ones, and so that should kind of go without saying. But it's not impossible to think that, for example, in Haiti there are some Levites, at least one, in that whole region. But what I would hope that someone who makes this sign would have the common sense to back it up with just like a caveat, and just help us understand, or help the people that are reading it understand that it's not comprehensive. There's no way that a sign like this, would be comprehensive, and they say that, in particular the groups in GMS that I follow. But I think again, it's just their PR campaign, their marketing team, just are non-existent. They don't seem to care about how people are going to consume their message, and then people discard their entire message, which is a shame. I think people who are discerned with the way that the times are right now, especially now, know that a lot of the stuff that they're teaching about the evils of the leaders of the world, it's like becoming obvious, and they knew this in advance. So credit to them for being diligent and circumspect, and looking and thinking, about the way the world is and how it should not be run like that. So that's a great thing, and it's not something they just this is not doctrine they came up with just yesterday. But it is important to qualify this sign with the reality that, first of all, it's incredibly oversimplified, but it's the thing that it's the most devoid of is spiritual understanding. It's like, and they say this, but it's very difficult for me to believe that they actually believe this to a deep level, is that this, now with the way the world is, with like the records that we don't have, about history, and that's prophesied that will happen to the Israelites. So, but overall, we do not have good history. In fact, we not only have like history block, but the stuff we're fed is incorrect. So we have another stumbling block, possibly a greater stumbling block than recovering, what is the real history, is just deciding what of it is correct, and it's this is the same with everything. It's like truth has many stumbling blocks. Our own family could be a stumbling block, our work, our own lusts, and all that kind of stuff. So that's the times that we live in right now. So we're not in that position to reconstruct a chart like this with any accuracy. I'm not, again, I say that I'm sure that in each of these cases you can find at least one person in Mexico who is truly from the tribe of Issachar. That statistically seems like it would be very likely that the entire country of Mexico would house at least a few individuals who were from the original descendants of Issachar. So that, and the number of them, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's just a starting point to get the discussion going, that someone has at least put in some time, hopefully, with prayer and fasting, which I doubt, honestly, not to be rude, I doubt has happened on a lot of things, because the Israelites have hop, skipped, and jumped over flat earth, which to me is plainly obvious that the earth is flat and biblical. But I hope that someone has been humble, in asking for this type of wisdom, especially because the implications are fairly significant. But the tribe should emphasize, or the chart should emphasize, that the 12 tribes exist today. That you have to believe that, or else the Bible is basically a fairy tale story of some people, that don't exist. So the Bible talks about 12 tribes beginning to end. That is known. And so it should highlight that. So for someone, and I've caught people around me who don't want to discuss who the real Jews are today, because it's very clear, or should be very obvious, that the real ones are not the ones in Israel. So now the question is, who are they? And people don't want to go down that road. So, that alone is enough to kind of weed out who God has not, implanted his desire for truth in. And so, again, the detailed level by the tribe and the region is to me, it's okay. I think it just needs to be explained very, very clearly that, the likelihood of finding someone, an Issacharite, for example, in Mexico, could potentially be just as likely to find them, in Iran. We just don't know. It sounds absurd, but we can't put an exact number to it. Only, the Most High can do that, But so it's very much just like this chart just helps us understand the migration pattern, and where many of them might be. Might might is very maybe, So, I think that the just knowing that the 12 tribes exist today, who the real Jews are, Yahushua being a dark-skinned individual, and the implications that would follow from that, makes it easier to help us identify who the true Jews are, for sure, or who they're not, I think is a better way to say it. And so, these kind of things, flat earth to me is a big one. I don't think that you're considered, I don't think, you would be outside of the Israelite fold if you're believing the ball earth. But, that's an important litmus test to me to know where God's 12 tribes are, because our ancestors knew that the earth was flat. All these individuals, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, Simeon, these individuals had some relationship with God, with the Most High. They were not oblivious to the structure of the earth, So, we're just basically returning back to what our forefathers have known, for a long time. So, that's important, but to me, not mandatory. I can't see, just because with the amount of people that believe that the earth is still a ball, it's just hard for me to believe that, that would be a criteria to filter out, the so-called 1/3. But another thing that I would use to identify the 12 tribes is one sin equals every sin, and that is a statement that the heathen will not understand. They won't even understand what sin is, or want to define it. And, and then the even more preposterous statement that committing one sin means that you're guilty of all of them, and literally all of them, and there's a lot of them in the world throughout human history and now. So that's a statement that not many people literally say. So it's very difficult to live by it, but it's very foundational and very biblical. And to me, one of the main things that separates people who, approach and appreciate the Bible as truth from any other scripture. It's not emphasized. It might be in other places, but it's not emphasized to the extent and the literalness that it is in the Bible. And so that to me is a much better indication of being at least a part of the 12 tribes. You might not know exactly which one you are, and this sign may help you get some starting point, but these kind of things are more relevant to deciding in these days whether you're in the fold of the 12 tribes whether you could potentially be one of the individuals in the 12 tribes or not. It's like it has to start with the spiritual, because God is a spirit. God is putting his spirit inside certain bodies. The body itself may have descended from Jacob, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that God's spirit of truth is in that individual, and that's the only thing that can be redeemed. That's the only thing that's preserved. The body itself carries no value in the life to come. It's not like you can cash that in for anything. This is a spiritual thing. God somehow, and no one knows really how this works, because it's insanely complicated, and no human could understand how God is able to put spirits in a body, and then also put blockers or demons in other people's bodies that don't allow them to think, logically, rationally, spiritually, and all that. So this is the work of God. Like, it is his energy that is being put into people, and it's being recovered. It's being brought back to himself. And that whole process, if anybody claims to understand that, run away from them as far as you can and run in the opposite direction, perpendicular, and do not look back, because there is nobody who understands that. It's impossible to understand that. It's impossible to understand that without knowing the architecture behind it of why someone would do that. And that alone, that's a harder question to me than how to do it. So that we have to be humble to know that we don't know. This 12 tribe sign is talking about physical location and physical offspring, but it misses the most important point of the actual spirit that would have to exist inside these individuals. And what would that spirit then talk about? What would they believe? What would they how would they think? What would they be looking forward to? And stuff like that. And I do believe that GMS and certain other Israelite groups house individuals from these 12 tribes. But I also worry because some of their doctrines are just be plain and simple, they're non-spiritual, and they resist talking about spirituality. They want to blame the white man for a lot of things, when in reality God is doing this. God is the so-called white man. He's the one who is giving these white people or Esau and all these different people in the world right now power and authority, and they are only doing what he has authorized. So it's God that is doing this. And so if we're going to be crying out to anybody in these days, it has to be God to make this stop, because we only feel that what we're allowed to do right here in America, if you live here, is to sin, to stay alive. You have to lie, cheat, steal, slander. You have to be a gossip. You have to be soft, certainly in the corporate world and probably in your family. You can't speak anything with any kind of boldness. You can't stand up for people because they might turn on you, and then others will probably turn on you. So you basically are a complete degenerate, and the scriptures, this is where the brothers need to talk about this more. It's like, well, how do we reconcile the fact that no effeminate can get into the kingdom, but pretty much everybody in the United States is being conditioned to be that way? It's like, you can be really bold, for an hour or so on YouTube, but when all of us have to go back into the real world, you have to be yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full, and sometimes that's okay, but there's other times if you see things that are not righteous, does anyone really have the power to call them out? And we don't, if you really want to keep your job. And so, just to survive right now, you have to sin. And to me, the 12 tribes are those who are crying out to God the most with intensity, saying, how can we be here when everything that we're forced to do and eat, we're eating foods that have babies in them? We have no idea what we're eating, even from Whole Foods, quote unquote Whole Foods. We don't know what is in those. Like, how can we trust somebody who's faked a moon landing and telling us the earth is a ball and purely profit driven and a complete whoremonger and pedophile and pervert? How can we trust them with feeding us, and our families? Like, we can't. So, this is this has to change. And to me, that's a much better litmus test to know who are the actual individuals from the 12 tribes. And if they want some understanding and some guidance to understand, which of the 12 tribes they are, if they want to go to that level. And I recommend people do, if they truly feel that they are an Israelite and they want to have some, deeper understanding, and God is not skimpy with wisdom, for those who turn themselves to him and ask, and wait potentially. So that's just my thoughts. I think that the chart is it would be in a discussion, it would be one of the later points. The most important thing is that who are the real Jews? Who are the real Israelites? Do they exist today? That will filter out a lot of people who, first of all, don't even know that the Bible centers around the Israelites, and they certainly will not want to admit that they exist today.